All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today. You have reached the Hickey Lane Stormwater Retrofit Project Concept Design Public Meeting. My name is Cecilia Lane, and I am an Environmental Protection Specialist with the District's Department of Energy and Environment, or DOEE, where I work on large-scale watershed restoration projects around the district. Actually, let me just take a pause there and do a sound check. Can everyone hear me okay? If you can, please let me know in the chat box. That's not promising. Okay. Let's take a pause and make sure we've got sound. Okay, Barbara says she can hear us. Great, fabulous. Thank you for that. Few housekeeping items before we get started. There should be on your screen a chat box as well as a Q&A box. I don't believe that the Q&A is functional, so we're gonna just direct all questions and comments to the chat box. If I miss your question, there will be ample time for Q&A at the end, so I'll be happy to circle back. Thanks to everyone for giving me feedback on the sound check. So again, my name is Cecilia Lane, and I am an Environmental Protection Specialist with the District's Department of Energy and Environment, where I work on large-scale watershed restoration projects around the district. We are expecting to be joined by Scott Aker from the Arboretum. However, he hasn't shown up yet, so we'll wait and maybe he'll join us in a little bit. We do also have several folks from the design team with us today who can get into some more of the details if there are very technical questions about the proposed design. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. A few more housekeeping items. This meeting is being recorded, and it will be uploaded to the project website within a week, as will a PDF of the slides in case you'd like to reference them in the future. All right, very briefly, today's agenda for our meeting, we're going to go over the project area and a little bit of background, the current existing conditions, what our goals are for this project, different approaches that we use for watershed restoration. Then we'll dig down into this specific restoration approach that we're using at Hickey Lane, or the concept level design, or like 35%. Then we'll get into the timeline for how this project will progress going forward, some FAQs, and like I said, some good time for Q&A. So very briefly, our project location. When we say we're working at the Arboretum, we are working at the Arboretum. So we all know where that is, located off of Route 50. But if we drill down, the area in particular that we are working off of is along Hickey Lane Northeast, near where the R Street entrance is. There's a large parking lot that most people probably park at to go to the Arboretum Visitor Center, and that would be where we're focusing our efforts. A little bit of background. What is stormwater and why do we care? Prior to development of the land, we had lots of vegetation and really great soils that acted like a sponge that would capture and hold stormwater and then slowly release it through infiltration of the soils into subsurface flow and then ultimately back into our streams and rivers. The vegetation would intercept a lot of the rainfall that would land on the earth and utilize some of it, and then return some of it to the atmosphere in the form of evapotranspiration. As you can see on the graphic on your left-hand side, there was a pretty equal balance in the water balance. Most of those arrows are the same size. On the right-hand side of your screen, you'll see a schematic of what post-development has done to our rainfall and stormwater runoff. First thing we do when we develop the land is cut down all the vegetation and clear the land, compact the soils so that they lose that good sponge-like quality, and then erect a lot of hard surfaces that don't allow for water to be absorbed. And you can see the difference again in those arrows between the surface runoff prior to land development and then post land development. So we have a lot less vegetation, we have a lot less interception, a lot less evapotranspiration, we have less infiltration into those existing soils, and less water is being returned through subsurface flow to our streams and rivers. We have a lot more water coming off of the land, and that term we use for that is surface runoff. So what? This is the so what factor. Why do we care? In the business, we like to say that the problem with stormwater is that it is hot, fast, and dirty. Hot, it contributes to thermal pollution when it's coming off of a hot parking lot. Anyone who's seen a parking lot in the summertime can actually see the heat coming off that parking lot. Well, when a rain event happens, stormwater will hit that parking lot and kick up all of that temperature, all that heat, and bring the heat with the stormwater into the streams and rivers. That thermal pollution is not good for our aquatic friends. We say it's fast, it's coming out of those outfalls. In the upper right-hand side of your screen, you'll see two pipes. That's how stormwater is returned to our streams and rivers in something called an outfall. These outfalls are typically placed at the same elevation of the stream bed. So in this picture here in the upper right-hand side, if you can see my arrow, you'll see that you have an outfall sort of hanging out a good 10 feet over where the stream bed is. Now that's where the stream bed used to be, but because the water comes out so powerful, it's sort of like a fire hose, it has all of these erosive forces that impact the sediment of the stream bank. So it sends a lot of that sediment downstream. You can see in the right-hand side picture just how dirty that water is with the amount of sediment that's in it. And then dirty. Stormwater is hot, fast, and dirty. Anything that is on the land, stormwater will pick up with it and carry it into the streams and rivers. Right here in the lower right picture, we can see just the amount of trash that we have in some of our streams in the district. But that's not limited to trash. It's also things like oils, heavy metals, grease, dog waste, fertilizers, and pretty much anything else that's on the land. We like to say that stormwater is really a problem of imperviousness. Although, as we're starting to learn, it's not just a function of imperviousness. So with that in mind, let's take a look at the land cover of the district. So in the district, we've got 68.3 square miles of area. Much of that is, we're having a little bit of a problem, is land, 61.3, where the rest is the streams and the rivers. And of that 61.3 square miles, approximately 43% is impervious cover. And what that means is a single 1.2-inch storm falling on this area will produce about 525 million gallons of stormwater runoff. And that's for one storm event. We use the 1.2-inch storm as our metric because that's the majority of the storms in the district are 1.2 inches or less on an annual basis. So again, that's 525 million gallons for one storm event. So that's really the problem that we're trying to deal with. The one thing that I like to do at this point is point out that there are actually two different sewer sheds within the district. The central part of the district is called the combined sewer shed, and that means that wastewater and stormwater are going to the same location. They're going to the wastewater treatment plant. That's where DC Water is focusing their efforts, and they're building large underground tunnels to capture the larger flow events. Because when there's a storm event, that water doesn't go to the wastewater treatment plant, but actually overflows with everything else into our streams and rivers. However, DOE, the rest of the district, the other 2/3 of the district is what we call an MS4 system, or a municipal separate storm sewer system. So there's 4 S's there. That's why it's called that. And that's where DOE focuses our efforts, because that means the water that goes into the storm drain goes into a pipe and is delivered directly to our streams and rivers. There's no filtration. There's no wastewater treatment that's occurring. Anything that's hitting that storm drain is going straight into our rivers. And again, it's everything that it picks up along the way. So what are the existing conditions of the site? Let's get into a little bit more about what this particular site has going on. Again, we are primarily working right near the R Street entrance to the Arboretum, adjacent to Hickey Lane Northeast. You can see there's some stormwater coming from R Street that comes into the Arboretum, and we'll see some photos in a minute that show the impacts of that. It kind of hugs the corner and then follows along Hickey Lane until where it eventually will get back into the Hickey Run tributary. However, upon a little further review through our investigations in the first part of the project, we found that the water we're trying to deal with is actually starting a lot further up within the Arboretum. We're managing water from a lot of land. And this schematic here shows you that drainage area. And basically, in the very top, you can see where we intend to put the BMP. Again, that's along Hickey Lane. And I apologize, BMP is shorthand for stormwater practices. That's very close to the entrance with R Street. But actually, we're managing, this stormwater is being generated by all of this land within this hatched area. So this is a pretty significant drainage area that we're dealing with. Okay, so some existing condition photos. Okay, this photo here in the upper left is looking at that R Street entrance. If you are clever, you can see there's the security truck that's trying to dissuade folks from coming through there in the afternoons. We can see the amount of erosion that's occurring along this curbside, right? So we are getting some water coming in from R Street. You can also see from this photo how water is coming from that upland drainage area and kind of crossing this area and coming into the area of, that we are most focused on. Similarly, this is just another perspective of the same shot, kind of shows that like during a larger storm event, how that water is really moving through there very quickly and creating erosion, undermining the asphalt. Ultimately, the area we intend to work is in this upper right picture here. You'll see that there's this turf area that runs adjacent to Hickey Lane. So this is looking north, standing on Hickey Lane. We've got the parking lot to our right. We've got some trees to our left, but we do have this nice open turf area that that's going to be where we're working. And this just shows a little bit further downstream. The stop sign is up here by the R Street entrance. The area that we'll be working in is directly adjacent to that. And if we don't capture and manage some of the stormwater, it shows how it'll continue on down, ultimately into Hickey Run, but also floods the greenhouse for the Arboretum staff. So that's no fun. Okay, so why did DOE take on this project? We hope to, our goal is to treat as much stormwater on the site as possible. So, you know, when we bid this project, we were really looking at kind of the stormwater from the public right-of-way or what's coming in from the R Street entrance, as well as whatever stormwater is being contributed by the Arboretum. But as I said, once we started to get into the investigative stage of this project, we found that the drainage area for this particular site was relatively significant because the Arboretum does have a lot of land area that drains to this location. That's a good thing for us because, again, we get more stormwater management, more treatment, although it does obviously impact our project. We want to support previous stormwater management approaches that were used on the site. A few years back, Springhouse Run was restored, and as part of that project, a few demonstration bioretention or rain gardens were utilized within the parking lot. They were thrown in at the end for good measure, but again, we're dealing with such a large area and such a large amount of water that they're insufficient for managing that water. We want to have minimal impacts on the community and the stakeholders for the site, as well as develop an amenity for the community and stakeholders of the site. And then finally, we're always looking for the opportunity to provide education about stormwater and restoration. All right, so now let's get into how do we restore these areas? What different techniques are utilized? Most stormwater practices function in the same way. They're basically trying to mimic the natural processes that would happen prior to land development. So they're doing exactly what we saw in that earlier schematic where we had lots of vegetation and good soils and not a lot of hardscapes. We're going to have better infiltration, utilize evapotranspiration to reduce that stormwater that's running off of the land, and then infiltrating it and allowing it to slowly return to our streams and rivers. There's less of it and it's cleaner and it has less of an impact on our streams and rivers. So in the EPA, they like to say, slow it down, spread it out, and soak it in. And that's what we try to do in the district is slow it down, cool it off, clean it up for the use of low impact development or green infrastructure. So here are some examples of that. A bioretention is a term for something that can manage stormwater. On the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see one in a more suburban setting where you've got your parking lot to your right and your building to your left, and still ample managed turf area. And then the picture on the right is actually the one in front of our offices in Noma on First Street. And this practice is taking stormwater from the adjacent roadway into this depressed area where it will be treated and then returned to the streams and rivers, cleaner and less of it. This picture, I should say, is a bit dated. These trees have quite grown up, but it's a little harder to get a good picture now that everything's grown up. But I'd encourage you all to take a look if you're in the area. All right, let's take a look at how bioretention works, since the majority of what we do in this business is utilize bioretention as a technique. So basically, water it's a depressed area, first of all, that has been backfilled with an engineered filter media that's 85% sand so that it can drain really well. Water flows in and then slowly ponds in that area and travels down through the engineered filter media. You see pretty quickly the ponded area will draw down, and then slowly over time, the water will make its way through the filter media. And then depending on the design and depending on your existing soils, either you have great soils and you can infiltrate into the surrounding soils where, again, that water will return as subsurface flow to the streams and rivers. Or if you don't have great soils, you'll have an underdrain, which we typically have to utilize in the district since a lot of our soils are infill redevelopment. And that underdrain is a perforated pipe that will collect the water and return the cleaner water back to the storm sewer system. Some other terms, but it functions in a very similar way. Similar to a bioretention is a bioswale, and you can kind of see on the left-hand side, we've got sort of a fancier approach with a lot more aesthetic pieces to it. And on the right-hand side, you might not even think that's a stormwater practice. It just looks like a below-grade swale that would allow water to be conveyed from the site, but actually that's an intentional practice that's providing treatment and a water quality benefit. Other techniques that we use to manage stormwater and restore watersheds are permeable pavement. We will not be using that in this particular design, but just wanted to bring your attention to it. This is pavement that looks a lot like regular pavement, but as you can see in that photo on the bottom left of your screen, water can actually infiltrate through it. And there's a good stone layer underneath that sort of acts to hold that water temporarily while it can be released slowly back into the subsurface flow. Again, we won't be utilizing that in this particular location, but it's good to be aware of. Practice we will be utilizing in this particular location is called something that we don't use very often in the district, but it's called the submerged gravel wetlands. Submerged gravel wetlands offer a pollutant reduction by using algae and bacteria that are growing in the filter media. Basically, what this means is we have a pretty high water table in the area that we're trying to work in. With bioretention, you need to have a certain distance between where the water comes in and then where it goes out so that it actually does get that filtration benefit. with a high water table, we don't really have that opportunity. So we're utilizing a different technique called the submerged gravel wetlands. We also heard from our partners at the Arboretum that this was an approach that appealed to them because it would allow for them to grow a different plant palette in this particular location. They would actually be utilizing wetland plants to provide those additional nutrient benefits. Give me just a minute. I'm receiving some comments in the chat box regarding the WebEx, and I appreciate the comments. I will have to deal with them in a moment. This picture on the right is a photo of a submerged gravel wetland that has been installed. So what I just showed you previously is a schematic of how it functions, but this shows you what it would look like at the surface level. Okay, so dealing with our project concept, just so everyone can orient themselves. This road right here, if you can see my mouse, is that Hickey Lane northeast. Coming in over here is our street, and you can kind of see where this curb was, or there's a lack of curb, and there was that erosion happening. The concept is to install a submerged gravel wetland in this open area. We need to have the infrastructure that we can tie back into. So we've got a nice storm drain there, and that's part of, in stormwater, we always want to make sure that we're working where the water is going. We're not redirecting the water. We're not working against gravity whenever possible. Now, in this particular location, we will be putting in a depressed concrete channel, because remember, we're going to try to capture as much of that contributing drainage area as we can. And just as a reminder, up in the upper left corner, you can see that contributing drainage area. The area in orange is where we will be working, and this is where all of that water is coming from. So for the project timeline, this project was contracted in March of this past year. Like I said, the first part is some of that investigative science. April through July, we spent a lot of time doing the field assessments, looking at how the land drains water, looking at those soils underneath ground. Do they have the ability to absorb additional water, or not so much as in this case? Then once we have that information, we can get into the design. So between August and January of this upcoming year is design development. Basically what that looks like is we have 3 different iterations of design. We have our concept level designs, or 30%, and that's tonight's meeting. Semi-final designs are 65%, and so that'll be within the next couple months. And if you are interested, we will be updating the website and sending out notices via social media and to the stakeholder list. And then ultimately, when we're fully designed and permitted, we'll have a construction kickoff meeting, as that'll be, we'll be able to get into some of the more details of what time of day are we working, what days of the week are we working, what kind of trucks we'll expect to see on site, what sort of parking impacts would there be, and so on and so forth. So some frequently asked questions that I get in these public meetings are, number one, how do we find our sites? And the number one answer is enthusiastic landowners. At DOEE, we don't own any land. So we really need to work well with our partners. And oftentimes what we find is our partners come to us. They're wrestling with how to manage a lot of the stormwater from the site. As I said, a lot of what we're doing is atoning for the sins of our past, when we did not understand the impact that land development had on our water resources and our aquatic friends. So when we have a landowner that is enthusiastic and willing to work with us, we go for it. So the Arboretum has been a good partner to us. We, like I said, did the Springhouse Run stream restoration project and some smaller low impact development retrofits of the parking lot. This is another opportunity for us to manage some stormwater and address some of the issues that they're experiencing. Sometimes our funding sources for these projects dictate where we can or cannot work. Oftentimes, I find that I can either only work on federal land with my money, or I can absolutely not work on federal land with my money. So for the funding source for this particular project, obviously I can work on federal land, so that's very exciting. Large areas of untreated impervious cover. As I mentioned, if we consider stormwater to be an issue of imperviousness, then when we find an area that's got a lot of impervious cover, like you see in the photo on the upper right-hand side of the screen, and has no stormwater management controls, probably because it was developed prior to the promulgation of our regulations, that's a great opportunity for us to come in and retrofit the site with stormwater management, and that will help the receiving rivers and streams. More impactful locations. Like I said, stormwater picks up whatever's on the land. So if this parking lot in this photo is immediately adjacent to a stream or river, that's going to be a great opportunity to install a stormwater management practice and capture some of those pollutants coming off the parking lot before it gets into the stream. What can I do? A lot of times I get the question, what can I do if stormwater is a function of imperviousness or past land development? Is there something I can do on my own property? And the answer is yes. We have, the district runs something called the River Smart Homes program. What this means is you can sign up at the link that you see on your screen, and you will have a stormwater auditor come out and conduct an audit of your parcel. They will look for how stormwater runs across your site, and then opportunities for capturing and reducing and managing that stormwater on your site. As a result of that audit, you can either get a rain garden or permeable pavers or rain barrels or tree planting or basecaping, which is a conversion from turf into some more water quality and habitat friendly vegetation. Again, those practices are free to the residents of the district. You just have to sign up at the link provided. And with that, that is the end of my presentation in the Hickey Lane Stormwater Retrofit project. I'm going to take a look at the chat box, but this is our Q&A opportunity. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat box, or let me know if you're having any issues and we might be able to figure out how to unmute you. So I'm getting some feedback on the WebEx platform, and we do have some DOE tech here support here today, since we have been receiving that feedback in the past. So I will, thank you, John. I will share that comment with our tech support after the fact. I will say that, as I mentioned, this presentation is being recorded, and I will put the audio link as well as the copy of the slides on the project website. Someone also asked, how can I get a copy of the drainage area map? Everything, the report, the concept design report, as well as the design plans are already on the project website. I'm going to see if I can share that with you right now. So if you just give me a moment, I will put the project website into the chat box where you can access all of the nitty-gritty details. Here's the project website. I just put it in the chat box. In that, like I said, you can get a copy of the concept design report, which discusses in detail the results of that investigative stage. We talked about things like the soils, the geotechnical investigations, the topographic surveys, the tree surveys. All that information is in the design report. At the same time, the concept level designs, where you can get into the actual engineered drawings, and the contributing drainage area map will be in there as well. Let's see. We have a question regarding the Hickey Run proper, the tributary Hickey Run or Hickey Run stream, and whether or not we will be working on it. Yes, that's part of a much larger conversation happening at the district. I think the goal is to restore Hickey Run. However, there's been most of the drainage area to Hickey Run is an industrial drainage area, and there have been a lot of historic pollutants that have been coming into Hickey Run. DOE has been trying to get a handle on the source of those pollutants and then trying to stop those pollutants from getting into Hickey Run prior to taking on a larger restoration project. So the stream restoration will happen at some point. It will not happen as part of this contract or project. But that's a great question. All of these things that we're doing are to support a larger, more holistic restoration of that tributary. And I think I just answered this question, but I'll repeat it back because I think it's a great question. You know, how does this particular stormwater management project relate to pollution and stormwater management of the larger Hickey Run? Again, every little bit counts. And as we saw from that drainage area schematic, this is a large amount of land that we are managing water from. So that provides a good opportunity for additional water quality benefits. And if we look at the drainage area of Hickey Run, it's 600 or 700 acres, which is pretty intense. That, you know, that's a lot of land area that does not currently have, most likely does not currently have a lot stormwater management within it. So again, every time we have an opportunity to manage stormwater within that drainage area, that's going to go towards supporting the larger stream restoration effort. We've been some good kudos to the Springhouse Run project, which I will second that. That was a great project, and I believe both the Arboretum and the users of the site, particularly our aquatic friends, are very happy for that. The funding sources for this are variable. Somebody asked about the funding sources. I believe the majority of the funding is coming from a DC water settlement when there was some form of pollution that entered into Springhouse Run that was accidental, but I can get back to you with the specifics on that. So don't quote me on that one. Any idea how long it will take to construct once construction begins? The majority of these projects, the most time consuming piece is design, development, and permitting. We are at the concept level of design. I estimate about 2 months before we get to semi-final design. That's that next stage. And then probably just another month before we finalize things. Because this is on federal land, our permitting obligations are a little bit different and shouldn't be too lengthy. And then once we get to construction, you know, I estimate about 6 months for construction, but really that's a conservative estimate, and we're probably looking at a couple of months, but I can give you a better timeline as the project progresses. So with that, that seems to address most, if not all, of the questions within the chat box. But what I can do is see if anyone is having trouble with that, and I can unmute you. Let's see if I can do that. And you can ask your questions that way. Let's see. Nope, I can't do that. Sorry. I thought I could. Anyway, please let me know if you're having any troubles or put those in the chat box. I should have also mentioned that, and I'll put this back up. You can reach out to me at any time. Here's my contact information on the slide right now. You can reach out to me by email. My first name, Cecilia, Cecilia, dot my last name, which is Lane, Lane, at dc.gov, or you can reach me on my telephone, which is 202-535-1961. And if you have any questions or concerns about the project as we progress, you know, feel free to reach out to me. No problem at all. And with that, I don't see any additional questions coming in, but we'll give everybody another minute to weigh in. And I appreciate the feedback on the WebEx, and I can tell you we are actively working to troubleshoot it. Let's see if our design team has anything they want to share with the group. Brian and George, did you want to share any additional information with our stakeholders?
I think you did a pretty good job. I would kind of just add that I think you might have said 6 months for construction. I think we would probably estimate somewhere between 6 to 10 weeks for construction. The only reason I even really go that far is I think that there's a certain amount of setup and demobilization from the site that just gets added on to every project. I assume the actual the meat of the construction window would really only probably be like 3 weeks, so somewhere around there.
Yeah, that's what I figured as well. But it was, we estimate 6 months just to be safe. But yeah, I think when we get to that level, when we get to the construction kickoff public meeting, I'd encourage you to participate. We will be able to provide a lot more detail in terms of the length of construction and then the impacts to the community. What, if any, parking spaces will be blocked off? What, if any, trees need to be removed? And, is there pedestrian access and things like that? But again, we won't have that level of detail until we're about ready to kick off construction. So please check back regularly. All right. Well, it seems like we are, we did get another question regarding maintenance. Always a good question about maintenance. Is maintenance included in this project, and will DOE be responsible for maintenance? And the answer for that is no, not for this particular location. The Arboretum will be responsible for the maintenance of this particular practice. They came to us and asked for some assistance, and our general policy is we were happy to build something on your land. You will be responsible for maintenance. We do want to see these projects succeed, though, so we do provide support in terms of identifying exactly what those maintenance, what those tasks are, what maintenance entails, and can provide additional technical support as needed. But no, for this particular project, we will not, DOE will not be taking on the maintenance. Great question, thank you. I should also say that we typically have a landscape architect, and we do for this particular project, to develop a planting plan. But because we're working with the Arboretum and they have such robust skill set in-house, they have expressed their own interest in developing the planting plan for this particular site. So we'll help support them in that effort, but we will not be developing a plan for them. All good questions. I really appreciate everyone attending and asking great questions. So, okay, with that, I think we are, we're not seeing any new questions coming in. So again, please, at any time, if you have questions or concerns, please feel free to contact me, reach out directly, and we'll be seeing you around the site. So thanks so much for attending, everyone, today, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.